Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be doing a review flight of the Cirrus Vision Jet. Now this is a relatively newcomer, both as far as aircraft goes and as far as things for Microsoft Flight Simulator go. I picked this one up because I'm like, oh, this seems kind of interesting, and it actually turned out to be much more interesting than I expected. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, I climb inside this aircraft and my brain goes, since when did we fly UFOs? I thought we flew airplanes. I mean, you look around and you have like everything ready to go, and you mean like, look at these hardcore Bose A20s that are just kind of like sitting here chilling. These actually work, which is something I thought was kind of interesting. Now I fly in the real world. This is not my headset. That is a different level of pilot, and yeah. But I'm floating my head around this thing. The modeling on this thing is really, really well done. Everything's carefully set up. The buttons are where you expect it to be. The displays look fantastic. The performance is excellent. You know, you've got all this just so much detail in this airplane. They really did a really nice job with the modeling. Sound effects, everything like that is absolutely on point. Like I said, really, really impressed with this whole experience. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to basically run us through a quick flight. Now, we're sitting down here at Nantucket, and we're going to be flying up to Hartford, Brainerd, Connecticut here, and a quick little flight, good example of what this aircraft can do well. Weather today is, it's tolerable, but again, we're not going to be worried about that too much because we're not going to follow any rules anyway. Also, I know that phone. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get this thing going. Let's flip on some switches here. Pretty straightforward. You can hear a bunch of pressurization and stuff like that. Flip that one, all that setup looks pretty good to me. Pro Peak comes on. One thing that I'm really impressed with is how simple this aircraft is to operate. You know, I've flown a lot of airplanes, and very few planes I think I've ever climbed into are this easy to go. Watch this. All right, let's start the plane. All right, that's it. While that's getting started, I'm going to start doing my pre-flight. So I'm going to come down here. We have all our different database statuses. The G3000, they did a fantastic job on this. Everything is very, very well modeled on this one. Very, very easy to use database. For those of you who have Navigraph charts, you can actually upload this into the system. I do have the old version of Navigraph back when it was like $10 a month or $10 a year kind of a thing. It's kind of a bit much for me, but for those of you who do it, you can actually link your account right here with the press of a button. So we're going to go to System Tests. I press the pre-flight test button, and it does the tests for me.
Higher. Higher. Stall. Stall. Stall.
Oh, by the way, while everything was going, the airplane started. Isn't this ridiculous? Oh man, I can't. All right, initial fuel, we're going to do FOB sync. You're supposed to push that twice. The book manual says you're supposed to hit that right before takeoff too. All right, we're going to go down, weight and balance. I'm going to confirm that that's correct. That's correct. And we go to the bottom, flight plan. Look at this. You can preset your flight plan. You can see I got everything all set up here. VNav, everything is in here. I'm, like I said, just so super impressed that they took so much time to kind of break this one down. So I'm done down here. I'm going to leave that alone. There's my radio. You can see my little navigation display. Engine is happily running. Take a look at the fuel selector switch on this thing. It's ridiculous. It's just auto. It's like, it's so weird. One thing I did promise, though, is the other features on this particular aircraft that they did. So let's go ahead down to this thing that says VAMs, and they give you a bunch of different options. So I'm going to shut off the chocks. I'm going to shut off the covers and protectors. I probably don't want those on anyway. We can select some different types of luggage. I could select like a snowboarding trip if I do that. Let's go floating to the back here. Can I get through this wall? I'd have to float outside and look into the luggage compartment. But you'd see like a bunch of snowboards and stuff chilling in there. All right, let's go. Actually, do they have more options here? I never play with it. Status, cold, dark. I'm not going to play with that. Bose, watch this. So you put the headphones on. Everything stays the same. Check this out. Why did they do that? That is just, oh my God, it's a detail that just didn't need to be done. I guess I'll leave it on just because, why not? FAQ, you can actually scan a QR code. And of course, you have config. You can do the executive version. And when you do the executive version, just sort of tweaks the chest. Yeah, there's just two seats here, two seats. I don't know why there's a British accent required for that, but deal. So I'm going to go back to home. This is done. Sweet, all set. Now we're ready to go. Like I said, what an airplane. One thing I do like is if you float around here, I've got all the different kind of warnings and stuff like that. You can see what my initial trim is. One thing I'm noticing is I need to get my pitch trim in the correct position there. That looks pretty good. I think it says 7 degrees in the book. That looks pretty good. And we need one click of flaps. I love the flap switch on this thing. Look at it. It's like a little... There's no blurb or anything like that off of 172. Like I said, very, very tickled by this thing. It's so different. All right, so we're in Nantucket here, so we're not going to taxi through everything. We're just going to kind of go around the corner here. Keep it nice and simple. Go ahead and disengage the parking brake. Yes, the parking brake was not on. Now, the engine on this thing is funky. It's a FADEC-controlled little jet engine, and when I say little jet engine, just like hitting the gas on this thing, it like sprays a little bit of air out the back. There's not like, there's no drama. But one thing I do want you to notice is notice how high performance everything is right now. I'm recording this at the same time as operating in a pretty busy airport with a pretty sophisticated displays, but everything is butter smooth. Like I said, just fantastic performance on this aircraft. Very, very, very customizable. There's 1,000,001 different buttons on it. I can make them do pretty much anything I want. I'll have to do a really detailed video later on in the G3000 because honestly, I might like it better than the G1000. At first, I did not care for it very much because it didn't have a lot of features. But now that I've kind of gotten the hang of it, I don't think I can go back to G1000s anymore. Kind of head out this way. Of course, in the aircraft I fly in the real world, what is this glass cockpit that people are always talking about? What is that even a thing? Is this some hypothetical NASA technology? It's just kind of fun to think about. So far, it sounds really, really good. Visual is very good. Performance is very good. It's such a wild plane. One thing I do wish that it had a little bit more of is a little more speed. But I'm not worried about that because, again, it all depends on what you use it for. Oh, man. This one in VR, by the way, is a trip because the aircraft is much, much bigger than it looks like. Right now, it looks like I'm flying like a little diamond or something like that. Now, when you're flying it in VR, you'll just realize that this thing really is a 5,300-pound behemoth kind of a thing like that. It is quite the aircraft. All right, now one more thing I'd like to do, too, is I'm going to flip this on, flip on my fans. I've got plenty of fans inside this aircraft. All right, so takeoff on this thing is pretty straightforward. It's literally full throttle, and you give it a tug when it comes time. All right, before I do that, though, go ahead and engage the park and brake. We'll go ahead and set up our speed bugs. The only one I really care about is these two, so I'm going to go ahead and activate those. Looks good. On brake. I'm going to smoothly apply full throttle. It's got that FADEC, so you can hear it kind of spooling up and down. Takeoff power, it's going to give us a little warning. The neat thing is you can't hold takeoff power. You'll do damage to the engine, but you can use takeoff power, which is exactly what we're doing with it. Get us rolling. About 45 knots. There's our rotate coming up in a second. If you forgot to set your trim, you're going to find out the hard way when you go to give the aircraft controls a tug. Notice how much runway we need, by the way. This is not a short takeoff landing plane kind of a thing. All right, up we go. We're just going to hold this for a second. And we're just going to get clear. Nantucket. This is one of the few times flying in and out of Nantucket. It is not foggy or insanely windy. It's just one of those things. All right, we're still at takeoff thrust. We can't live here. We can hang out, though. But one of the things the designers provided is this little thing that says MCT snap. When you click it into that position, it puts you in your maximum continuous thrust position. Now, the reason that's so handy is once that's been set, I don't have to touch the throttle again until I want to use the automatic thrust feature a little bit later on, which just makes this thing so much easier to fly than a lot of them are. So we're going to pretend we're in an IFR flight, and we're going to go right through those clouds there, and we're going to get all sorts of nasty warnings and things like that about ice in a second. And if you take a look right now, we're pitched pretty much at the right position, but we're not nearly as fast as most people would expect us to be. I'm not accelerating up to 250 knots or anything right now. I'm barely just kind of chugging along here. This thing is definitely a propeller airplane replacement. This is not a I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. Yeah, you would not use it if you want to do cross-country, like a twin-engine replacement or something like that. This is much more almost like a TBM kind of a competitor or something. All right, now we don't need to be 15 degrees nose up, though. I'm sure my packs do not care for that very much. I find it kind of entertaining sometimes, but I can tell you I have more than one passenger who's not thrilled about that. All right, there we go. 7.5 degrees is always kind of the sweet spot. While that's running, let's go ahead and get everything all set up. We're going to go up pretty high today. Nothing excessive. There we go. I like to manually manage thrust at this phase. I like using auto thrust when we get a little bit closer to our destination there. We're heading to the west, so we'll do 12,000 feet. Seems to be pretty fair. Flight director, automatic pilot, flight level change mode. Flight level change, it's a little bit slow for flight level change. We'll go up to our V speed of 166 or 165, I think it is. And yeah, looks like 165. I'm going to leave the throttle on max continuous because I'm not paying for the fuel in this thing, so I'm not going to stress about it. And now we are on our way. Actually, one thing I should probably do is activate nav mode. Let's double check to make sure it's on GPS. Yep. So you can see how incredibly simplified the experience is. This is an aircraft that, I would introduce people to how simple flying will be in the future. This would probably be the airplane that I'd kind of climb into just to sort of experience. And again, I can just sort of enjoy the sights, or if I want to, I can play a Mr. Executive. Go sit back here. And just sort of enjoy the clouds as they kind of go by. It's always fun, if you have a book on tape or something, you put your book on tape on and you just kind of, actually they don't call them, I think they call them audiobooks now. But anyway, we're just kind of cruise, zip through these two cloud layers and make our way up to Hartford. So as we're climbing now, let's go play around with the avionics, which is another thing that I think is really worth pointing out here. Now, when I first came in, I saw all these screens and all these new buttons and things. My brain immediately assumed that, that most of this doesn't work. I was shocked to find out that most of it works. Like it works in some, of course, there's no charts in that particular case, but all of this stuff, like the switches actually do things. Like if I turn on the map, for example, or I want to turn on traffic, or I want to do half traffic, and then I want to do map on one side. Like look at the fact that I can just press a couple buttons to select exactly what I want to be able to dial this one in. So you have navigation map on that side, and then I'll go put traffic on that side. And then of course, once I'm in traffic mode, you can change the range or the zoom on the traffic mode all dynamically. Like this is so impressive, the fact that I can change these things with that fast or click of a button. So go ahead and hide that real fast. But that's not just all what they gave you. They gave you, you have your full flight plan options. Again, we're going to Hartford here. If I wanted to, I could click on Hartford. You get all your waypoint info. I can push this button. It's going to tell me details about the airport. It's going to tell me about the runways. Again, I can dial into my different frequencies. I could hit frequency here. Of course, what we're going to do is everybody's favorite frequency down there at Brainerd. We don't have an ILS, actually. It's an LDA, but I appreciate the concept. Where is our ATIS? That's a little weird. Maybe I need to look a little bit. Oh, there it is, right there, 126.45. Boop. So again, you can come in here, and if I want to, I can put that on my active frequency on COM2, and just like that, now I can call up the ATIS. That's incredible. Or I can come in here, I can press the proc button. Let's say I want to do an approach. RNAV for 2 would be the easiest. There's actually a lot of fun little approaches that you can do in Hartford. But if I wanted the RNAV, I could select that one. It gives me all the different preview. You can even hit the preview button, but I can hit the show chart, and it would go ahead and appear there if I wanted it to. But again, because of the way it does, boop, hit that one. It actually activates it immediately, and look at that. Just like that, we have now logged into the actual approach that we're using for that particular flight here. Go back home, go back to half mode, I'll go back to map, and you can see we're on our way. So I'm going to go zoom out just a tiny bit here. And you can see there's our approach. And it's just that simple. And the incredible thing is the utilities work. So I can come in here, I can go to avionics settings, I can change the time format, I can change the magnetic mode, I can change the units. If I want to go to, Fahrenheit, I can come up here and select my different options that display on the bottom of the screen. You can do all of that right here at a moment's notice. Now I can go ahead and press that and get rid of it, but there's other things in here too. If I go to aircraft systems and I want to do status and info, I get a split page, which allows me to see how much oxygen I have on board. Is my parking brake? Do I diddle the doors? Do I have external power? All these options are all just like that. That's just incredible when you think about the fact that I have access to that at a moment's notice. If I just want to look at the engine and fuel, you can take a look at the breakdown. It lets you know what the fuel pumps are, what the settings are. It gives us an endurance meter right there at the top. I know exactly what my range is as I'm climbing up here. My electrical systems, my ice protection is all provided there. I even have a landing gear page that I can use to go ahead and determine things, like in my system tests, which we did earlier. So all of this works, which, like I said, is just incredible when you think about it. Go back to full screen. And again, that will be a very detailed video for another day, because I know people are into those kind of things. So we're continuing our climb here, and again, this aircraft is it's designed to be executive. It's designed to get up to altitude. So let's skip to that part, and there we go. So now what we can do is we can take advantage of our automatic throttle setting. We have an auto throttle, we have an SMS, and a manual mode. So when I press the auto throttle button and I select FMS mode, the computer automatically selects the appropriate amount of thrust and speed for a particular flight. So in this case, it's automatically selected 250 knots for us, and the engine will automatically queue itself up to the appropriate power setting for that particular amount of thrust. So what I'll do is I'll cheat just a tiny bit here. Go ahead and speed up time. You can see how stable the aircraft is. Kind of sneak up to that, and you're going to watch the thrust slowly start backing itself up in just a few minutes here. And 1, 2, 3. And we're back to a normal time here. So you can see that's about how much speed and how much thrust we're getting. Ground speed here, if you float your head down, we're getting about 284 knots. For those of you who are big fans of the TPM like myself, this aircraft is definitely a contender as far as that performance goes. So now we're just a matter of cruising. So a good time, go ahead and take a look at some of these utilities. Go ahead and save fuel, and we'll see just how well we're doing here. So right now, we have 280 gallons here. That's 3 hours of endurance. We have about a 900-mile range. We could probably get a little more altitude and get a little bit longer range on this one. But it just gives you a really, really good idea of just what this aircraft was designed for. Now, this is a 3-hour endurance right now, which is not a very long flight for us. And 890 nautical miles is not that far. I'm not going to Disney World from New England kind of a thing in an aircraft. But if I'm doing a relatively short hop, this would definitely make a lot of sense for me. So let's skip to the top of our descent. All right, let's start making our way down. Pretty easy. Gonna go ahead and select a little bit lower of an altitude. Let's see, that looks pretty good. Now this aircraft is just very, very simple. You don't have to worry about overheating an engine. You just kind of take us down. So I'm going to disengage the automatic throttle. I'm just going to smoothly pull the throttle back. I'm going to press the flick button. And what we're going to do is we're going to execute a pretty aggressive descent here. So incredibly, one of these things I was really surprised with is the book talks about the descents you should be using in this one. Now, if you're flying with passengers, you're supposed to be limiting your descent to about 1,500 feet per minute. For us, since we're so darn close, when I pull the throttle back in order of a 250 knot flick, you can see it's getting us about 2,400 feet per minute, which is incredible if you think about it. So 10,000 feet in 4 minutes kind of a thing. When I look over here, you can see I got about 9 minutes to get to Madison. So that's actually going to work pretty well for us. To give you an idea what that's going to look like in perspective, let's say I'm going to come back over here, go ahead and turn on the automatic throttle here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just like vertical speed. And we'll go ahead and pick a vertical speed that's going to be a little bit more passenger friendly. And I can show you the difference here. So that's about 1,500 feet per minute there. I've got the auto throttle engaged. We're in FMS mode. I don't have speed brakes out or anything. So 1,500 feet per minute down, which, like I said, is the recommended for passengers, gets us still plenty of speed, but notice we're at 46% power. So this aircraft is a very, very high drag aircraft. That was something that I was really, really surprised with when I was playing with it earlier, is the fact that when you're approaching with this thing, it really, really slows down quick. It almost feels like it has speed brakes. I don't know if that's a function of the real-world flight model or it has something to do with the aircraft itself. But like I said, very, very surprised by this particular feature here. So we're starting a descent and down into Hartford here. You can see we're right over the Sound. This is a super fun approach. It's very, very easy, and it gets you there at a really funky angle, which makes it kind of fun. Let me show you. All right, we're just coming into Madison VOR right now. Swinging this a nice wide corner. I love these little things here. I also like the fact you have the caps, but you want to see something really weird in this plane while we're getting ready for landing an airplane and everything like that. You have a safe emergency auto land feature, and all you do is you push the button and the plane will find its nearest runway and land on it for you. And there's also a TV. I don't know what you need the TV for, but like, just kind of neat to have, I guess. I don't know. Just kind of one of those things. All right, so what I was saying a little bit earlier is this aircraft, it does not like to slow down. It's just kind of a neat. By the way, there's an airport called Chester Airport, which is over here on the right. Worst, most dangerous airport I think there is in Connecticut. And there are runways that are shorter in Connecticut, but I find that one to be more dangerous. And you'll see what I mean. So one of my comments was this aircraft does not know how to slow down. And right now we're still on FMS thrust, and you can actually see that as we've gone to a lower altitude, our maximum Mach number has actually snuck up on us, and it threatens to run directly into what we're doing. Taking a look again, I've flown this entire flight in real time, except for the parts I kind of edited it out there. And you can see we're coming up about 2 minutes and 50 seconds on WEGOT, and then it's basically straight down from Lomas down to that runway that we're going to be landing on. So pretty impressive. And I like how there's an endurance thing right at the tippy top of the screen, so you know exactly how much fuel you have. Again, so many little things that are just so modern that we don't have. We have to do things by hand on a lot of those old aircraft. But like I said, so tickled, so tickled. All right, let's go ahead and skip up to WEGOT there. There we go. All right, let's slow down. I'm going to switch to manual thrust mode. Now I'm just going to pull the throttle back. I'm not going to do anything special. We're going to get a little warning about the auto thrust being disengaged and everything like that. And of course, we are nice and high, which is exactly where I want it to be, just for the purposes of my demonstration. I'm going to go ahead and take my altitude selector. I'm going to go down to, I call like 700. I'll do 1,000 feet kind of a thing. We'll do flick. And we're just going to let the nose kind of peel over on its own here. Now, I mentioned this aircraft really is a high drag plane. We just nosed over here. We're getting about 3,000 feet per minute. And in a second, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to arm the approach. Go ahead and hit that. It's not going to do anything yet. We have to get a lot lower before the approach will actually arm. Now, if you actually look over the window here, you can see the end of the runway, and you can see how much of an oblique we are for an angle. Now, the reason this particular airport has such a funky approach like this is on account of the fact, by the way, you wouldn't do 1,000 feet here. You do 1,000 feet way, way, way down here. I'm just doing this to show. One of the interesting things about this approach, and you can really, really see it down here, is the fact that it was designed to keep you from flying over a lot of houses with people who are going to get very, very grumpy at you, kind of a thing like that on your approach. So we're all set to go. Another cool thing we can do here is I can come down here to Utilities. And you actually, I'm sorry, that's not what I wanted. I'm going to come over here to Speedbug. So I'm going to click on Landing. I'm going to go ahead and activate my reference speed, actually back. Sorry. Go activate my approach speed. You can see it displays it proudly right there on the screen, so I know exactly what a speed I need to be maintaining. And one of the wild things, of course, is I can come over here and actually dial this in to maintain a constant speed during approach here. So I'm actually going to bring this down, and we're going to hold 150. I'm going to flip on the manual auto throttle here. We're going to switch it to man mode, set it to 150. That looks pretty good. Like I said, in the real world, we would have lost our license already being this low in this approach, but that's okay. Looks pretty good. Now, one cool thing is if you float down here, they give you the speeds of 190 for 50% and 150 for 100%. So what we'll do is in just a moment, we'll go ahead and get that first notch of flaps in. And like I said, this aircraft really slows down fast once you pop those flaps down. All right, so we're approaching Lomas. I'll go ahead and zoom in just a tiny bit here, make it a little bit easier. Easy approach. Like I said, I'm not doing anything excessively sketchy here. And once we hit that, we'll go ahead and dirty the plane up and get ready for landing here. Flaps notch 1. We'll go ahead and reduce speed to 140 knots here, because that way we're safe within all the different speeds we need. See how our gear speed is also 150. All right, let's hit that spot. And that should be about Lomas. Gear down, flaps down. Let's start getting ready for our approach speed here. Give everything a moment to settle. Now again, a personal jet. That's what this thing is. And I cannot believe it. The fact that like I've got auto throttle and a jet that's like people size. Notice, by the way, at full flaps, I'm at 86% engine power right now, and I'm not even maintaining my speed here. So what I will do is I'll go ahead and reduce this a little bit, come down to 100 knots, which is going to be our approach speed. 100. Looks pretty good to me. Look out the window, and again, our target's going to be coming up in a couple moments. Notice, like I said, how much of an oblique we're at here, which makes landing this thing a lot of fun. All right, approach speed is selected. Everything's all set to go. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Not bad at all. Like I said, very impressive with this aircraft. And I'm actually going to flip off the automatic thrust here because the automatic thrust is not doing the best job as far as keeping us at the speed we need to keep it at. Doesn't surprise me though. Take the nose down just a little bit. Autopilot off. I love how it gives you all the angry honks and everything like that. There we go. Now we're just going to start our approach by hand here. Isn't this crazy how much of an angle this thing is? So as we're approaching, kind of a couple last minute thoughts on this. Very, very impressive. They did a really, really nice job both modeling this aircraft as well as creating something that is definitely unique. There's nothing else I have in Flight Sim that comes to mind right off that is quite like this plane. I definitely have plenty of propeller-driven aircraft. I have plenty of jets, but there's nothing that combines the sense that I can take off and land at my, kind of local airport, which is what we're coming up on right now. Or, of course, what I could do is, I could operate it out of a big, heavy airport with a pretty hefty load, all safely and all successfully without a lot of things to complain about. Like I said, there's not a lot of stuff that I know offhand that's quite that good, which is why I'm just so impressed with this thing. All right, I'm going to pull up just a little bit. We're getting a little low. That's what happens when you stop paying attention. I love these RNAV approaches because, unfortunately, everything happens very quickly. Yeah, it looks pretty good right there, actually. And I can see off the side of the runway there, we've got plenty of warning on the VASI. In the real world, that's a PAPI, not a VASI. I'm not going to stress about it, though, because the person who took the time to model it did a pretty nice job otherwise. Man, out the window. Look at how bleak this is. I love it. So now the interesting thing I found with landing this thing and my little time experimenting with it is the fact that it floats hardcore. If you hit the speed remotely off from where it's supposed to be, it will just want to hang out in the sky for 25 minutes. It's just very, not that it's a bad thing necessarily, it really wants to just sort of hover.
5.
All right, approach speed is at 90 knots there. I've got it basically perfect. My attack, I got to come up just a tiny bit here. Just a tiny bit more. There we go. Give it a couple RPM. Now, of course, in the real world, you get bounced around so hard because there's actually a waste management facility right there on my left that I'm about to fly over. Get a little slow. Just give it a couple RPM. Nothing too excessive. Looks pretty good. Maybe I should activate the CAPS parachute. That'll get us down on the ground in a hurry. Woo! There's the verbal. Love this runway. All right, we're just going to go ahead and now pull the throttle back. Runway's made. Now check this out. Now you're a lot higher than you think you are. There's a little bit of a float. Nothing too bad, though. There it is. And on the blocks. Good enough for government work. All right, we have reached our destination. So, last minute thoughts. Cool plane. This would definitely be worthwhile to probably sit there and do a video series on so that we could have a little bit more fun with it, as well as some of the other options that we don't typically get to see with it. But like I said, very impressed with what they've achieved here. This aircraft is definitely, it's unique. It sounds great. It's impressive. The systems are well modeled. It's actually, I feel like you get a pretty good value too because it's not too expensive. People would charge $60-$70 for an aircraft like this, and they're getting it for like 25 to 35, which is really impressive. Other than that, enjoy.